open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
I think a new world order is emerging.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific caste system.
We shall go on to the end. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall never surrender.
Good day, everybody! It's the 22nd of March, 2014, and this is UCY.tv with the Solvinur Event. How you doing, everybody? If you go to the website UCY.tv, mouse over shows, you will find a lot of shows there. If you click on any of them, you end up in the chat room, where there's already a couple of people there, like Ben, JJ, Jules, Lady Pitbull, Major Ford, Vincent, and two unknowns. Welcome, everybody. So, the topic for today is bureaucracy. So let's get into it, shall we? We're starting with a couple of quotes. Bureaucracy is the art of making the possible impossible, by Javier Pascual Salcedo, or something like that. Bureaucracy destroys initiative. There is little that bureaucrats hate more than innovation, especially innovation that produces better results than old routines. Improvements always make those at the top of the heap look inept. Who wants to be seen as inept? This is by Frank Herbert, Heretics of June. In any bureaucracy, the people devoted to the benefit of the bureaucracy itself always get in control, and those dedicated to the goals the bureaucracy is supposed to accomplish have less and less influence and sometimes are eliminated entirely. This is by Jerry Pournelle. Here's one from an anonymous. If an idea can survive a bureaucratic review and be implemented, it wasn't worth doing. I did, Pitbull. Mayor Ford, yeah. You missed that? I didn't read the whole thing, but yeah. Whether the mask is labeled fascism, democracy, or dictatorship of the proletariat, the one that the quote continues a little more, but what should stand out, it says that whether the mask is labeled fascism, democracy, or dictatorship, the word mask should, no problem, Lady Pitbull, should stand out to you, because that's what it is, right? It doesn't matter what kind of political system you're in, it's always a mask. It's a puppet show, you see? So, continuing, our great adversary remains the apparatus, the bureaucracy, the police, the military. Not the one facing us across the frontier of the battle lines, which is not so much our enemy as our brother's enemy, but the one that calls itself our protector and makes us its slaves. No matter what the circumstances, the worst betrayal will always be to subordinate ourselves to this apparatus and to trample underfoot in its service all human values in ourselves and in others. Very well put by Simone Weil. Here's another very good one by Aldous Huxley. Now I wonder sometimes why these people speak so plainly. Like Huxley, right? A democracy which makes or even efficiently prepares for modern scientific war must necessarily cease to be democratic. Yeah, not that there's a problem with that, but he's talking to probably, right? He's talking to people that think that democracy is okay. All right? So, a democracy which makes or even effectively prepares for modern scientific war must necessarily cease to be democratic. No country can really be prepared for modern war unless it is governed by a tyrant at the head of a highly trained and perfectly obedient bureaucracy. By Aldous Huxley. So those were some quotes. Gonna do an introduction. This is apparently it's not that old. It's from January 2013. So let's see what this says. I haven't read this myself, by the way. So, why does a researcher in the field of cognitive science and cognitive systems write a text about bureaucracy? Okay. Well, one of the main problems in cognitive systems research is that although we can develop robots and other systems that are able to solve particular problems intelligently, we consistently fail to develop robots that understand what they are doing. Yeah, no kidding. That's impossible. You cannot make a machine understand. It doesn't work like that. They fail a couple of things for that, like consciousness, for instance. Continuing, and not understanding what they are doing is a pretty good description of bureaucrats. Oh, interesting. Since the role of understanding is key to our field of science, I feel qualified to add a more cognitively founded analysis of the phenomenon of bureaucracy to existing accounts that tend to stem from the organizational or social sciences. Welcome, Mike. How you doing, buddy? Not surprisingly, this text concludes that bureaucracy is a pathological state of human organization, characterized by intelligence without understanding. Bureaucracy stems from the desperately embraced illusion held by a particular subset of people that human organizations can be approached as closed systems to be fully described in rational and formal terms. More specifically, this assumption is made by, quote-unquote, superiors, who interpret the world either as filled with absolute truths, or who believe that all knowledge outside the scope of their main competence is highly uncertain and therefore of little use. These quote-unquote superiors interpret any open world as too complex to handle. Yeah. Which is true for them. Yeah. And as such, they consider complexity reduction the first priority of the organization. Yeah. Well, this is not a closed world, guys. As far as I can see, as a philosopher anyway. There's something called chaos, you see? And that kind of makes it open. Anyway, continuing. However, they fail to acknowledge that this priority might be the result of their own limited or specialist understanding. As a result, they do everything to bring the complexity of the organization down, even if this results in a mass destruction of the available competence and commitment. Hey Dan, how you doing, buddy? It is this enforced attempt to complexity reduction that, if not curtailed, results in an organization in which co-workers are treated as, and effectively, reduced to robots devoid of understanding, replaced by procedure. Yeah? You see, there's the whole Prussian system is coming back. You see, understanding belongs to the trivium. You know, you understand your grammar and you're able to function on your own like that. That, by the way, is a perfect short summary of the trivium. Because understanding is a logic. The grammar, that's what your study field is, and the action is the rhetoric. You see, so grammar, logic, rhetoric, and because the understanding is replaced by procedure here. See, it's obedient. How did that that guy put it in one of his talks? When he was talking about education also, I don't think he said obedient slaves, but something like that, you know? So let's try this again. And it is in this attempt to complexity reduction that, if not curtailed, results in an organization in which co-workers are treated as, and effectively reduced to, robots, devoid of understanding, which is replaced by procedure. And empathic involvement, replaced by blind obedience. See? Very well put here. In a bureaucracy, the whole organization is treated more as a formal system, a computer program, than as an assembly of highly capable, willing and autonomous individuals who contribute to the greater societal goal of the organization. This treatment is not only highly degrading towards the living, breathing and feeling people who form the organization, but it is also deeply misguided, because we need pervasive understanding of the world at any part of the organization. Otherwise, the organization will degrade to mediocrity at best, or a deeply corrupt and self-serving robotic zombie entity at worst. So the actual topic of this text is what happens if understanding, competence and compassion are purged from an organization, and the organization starts to consider itself as disconnected from the greater society from which it derives its existence. Yeah? Sounds a bit like government, doesn't it? The result is, I argue, precisely the pattern that characterizes bureaucracy. This pattern will be contrasted to a non-bureaucratic approach that allows for the open character of human organization and relies on autonomy, competence and compassion instead of rationality and imposed, stultifying structure. This text consists of two parts. The first part is a summary of the main text in the form of two tables. The first table presents a comparison of the properties, signs, symptoms, phenomena, and other characteristics that constitute the bureaucratic as well as the non-bureaucratic syndrome. The second table is a list of red flags, also compiled from the main text, that are indicative of encroaching bureaucracy. Yeah, when I glanced over this text, I saw these tables. I hope I can, quote-unquote, read that to you, so it'll be understandable what we will see. The main text forms the justification of the summary tables. It starts with dictionary definitions of bureaucracy and authority and concepts of authoritarianism and its opposite, libertarianism. That refers to either an underdeveloped or well-developed ability to deal with real-world complexity. From this, we progress towards an analysis of the role of understanding and lack thereof in human organizations. This leads to an outline of the quite predictable progression towards more and more bureaucracy and the eventual mediocrity devoid of compassion. This vision of mediocrity is contrasted with a description of how non-bureaucratic organizations function and what their telltale properties are. This opposition is used to address the question how to fight encroaching bureaucracy, which is not at all difficult in the early stages. The treatise ends with a description of the known epistemological stages and their properties that are highly predictive of the leader's style and whether the leadership will lead to more and more or less bureaucracy. Ultimately, it is a moral question whether one wants to stimulate or oppose bureaucracy, whether one is in favor of stultification or growth. The answer depends on one's epistemological stage. This is Dutch, guys. I didn't even know that. This is by Tjeerd Andringa, Associate Professor of Sensory Cognition, the Alice Institute, University of Groningen. That's in the Netherlands. Interesting. Well, I noticed that a lot of these works from Dutch universities have been translated into English. I guess that's a good sign. Yeah. Okay, so these are these tables. And let's see if I can put this out there in audio. It's a bureaucracy recapitulation. Recapitulation. What the heck is that? Sounds like something. Let's see. You know, you got the word capital in there, right? So that's strange. It sounds like summary to me, but let's put it in a dictionary. Let's see what we get. Dictionary. Pop. Dictionary. Alright. Paste that there. Hit enter. Recapitulation. The act of recapitulating is the state of being recapitulated. Yeah, duh, then you're using the same word for trying to explain something. That's not how we do things, you know. I noticed that for the first time when I started using a Dutch dictionary, and I looked up the word om. O-M. It's a rather strange Dutch word. And the whole explanation of this word om was filled with the word om. So, you know, that doesn't make any sense. You should use other words if you want to explain something. Okay? Okay, so the second one is a brief review or summary as of speech. So you see I was correct there. It's a kind of summary. Okay, now that we've had that. Let's see. Hey, Akbar, how you doing, buddy? Welcome to the chat room. So it's, this table is, I guess it's, it has two tops, and then, from, the side, you get, kind of topics. Okay, so the two tops are bureaucratic syndrome and non-bureaucratic syndrome. Alright? And the topics are organizational goals, overall strategy, competence, autonomy, and so on. So, for a bureaucratic syndrome, the organizational goals, it says, societal goals of the organization are only adhered in name, but neither understood nor clearly implemented. Okay? So, let's see, what does it say under non-bureaucratic syndrome for organizational goals? Development of a broadly shared vision about the societal raison d'être. That's French. And it means reason to be. Okay, so let me read that in English. Development, so for non-bureaucratic syndrome, the organizational goals has a heading, it says, development of a broadly shared vision about the societal reason of being of the organization and the way to realize it. Okay, interesting, don't quite understand that. Then the next one is overall strategy. In the bureaucratic syndrome, that is, stimulating sameness and oneness through standardization and obedience. Okay, that's clear. The overall strategy of a non-bureaucratic syndrome, continual skilled improvisation on the basis of a shared vision and well-chosen procedures. Alright? That makes sense. Next one is competence. Under bureaucratic it says, ignoring, discouraging, and demoralizing competent subordinates. Yeah, you've probably had that experience in your job or something. Non-bureaucratic, relying on and fostering all proven and budding competencies in the organization. Yeah. So you don't see that a lot, especially in all the jobs that I've had, and I've had many. It is bureaucratic. You know, they ignore you, they discourage you, they demoralize you, and they don't listen to you when you have a good idea. You know, I came lots of these jobs. I went to my chef and I said, well, you're doing this that way, but it's smarter to do it this way. You think they ever listen to you? No way. Next is autonomy. In the bureaucratic syndrome, it says, subordinate autonomy is not an option. Obedience is more important than competence. Yeah, that's right. You know, I remember that from jobs also. It's like, you do your job, right? And you're thinking, this could be done better, more efficiently. Right? So, but you're not allowed to do that. No. Just do it the way we tell you, you know? Obedience. In a non-bureaucratic syndrome, autonomy is autonomy and competence development of subordinates expected. Yeah. Okay. Next is content. In a bureaucratic heading, it says, complete disregard of content while favoring form. In non-bureaucratic, content is leading, form a means. Alright? That's understandable, alright? Next is organizational development. Under bureaucracy, it says, structures and procedures adapt to the lowest competence level. Non-bureaucratic, everyone is expected to learn and grow towards autonomous roles in organization. Yeah. And you know, if I were head of a company, I would encourage people to come up with ideas and learn, you know? Not so in all of the Dutch companies I worked for. It doesn't happen like that. I mean, it goes even as far. This happened at the ink factory where I worked. And we were making cartridges, inked cartridges. With, I don't know the English name for this, they are called spuitgietmachines. They melt plastic and then they put it under pressure into a certain form. And these forms can then be used to fill in with the rest of the equipment to make an inked cartridge, right? And so we did that, and that was okay. The thing works, and we put them in boxes, and we check the quality, you know, that there are no holes in there and stuff like that. And then we send them on to the next room. And the next room, they take them apart and they put in the different parts. Now, also because of the invention of the laser printer, that part of the factory was closed. And so I lost my job, unfortunately. It was not too bad of a job, I must say. However, before that happened, we were all called, you know, the room where we made the plastic stuff and the room where they filled it in. And this fat, person, I guess I should say, he starts talking to the other room, not the one that I was in, making the parts, but the one that put the parts together, right? Most of them were girls. And he started lashing out at these girls, and you cost us 1 million euros, and now we have to close down. He was getting mad, and I was like, excuse me? So I raised my hand, and I said, well, listen, who's in charge of that room? And I didn't even get an answer to that, right? I mean, seriously, even we had a chef in our room. If you had a problem, you could go to the chef and you say, well, this isn't working, or that isn't right, or we don't have mats for this. You need to get mats, you know? And, but the other room apparently didn't even have such a person. Now, he should be responsible, or she, for teaching these, women and girls how to put these things together. I mean, they get them off the, I don't even know the English word for that either. But, this factory got their workers from the uitzendbureaus. Those are like, mediums. What do you call them? They are, most of them are in the center of the city, I mean. And there are little shops, and you go in there and you say, you got a job for me? And they say to you, well, what kind of job are you looking for? Oh, I say, anything. And they say, well, yeah, we've got a production line open at the moment. And they send you to another factory, you see. So you don't go to the factory, no, you go to the city center. There you enter a little shop. And this little shop gets a lot of money for you to be working for another boss. So they're kind of in the middle, you know. It's really, I don't think it should be done like this, but that's how it works. It used to be done like that, but then it was illegal, right? It used to be done like that. There were a lot of people out there that were looking for other people to put them to work somewhere else. And these people got a certain payback for that, right? But that was illegal. And now, all of a sudden, I don't know when this happened, this must have been like 30 years ago or something. The government made it legal, and all of these shops start sprouting up in the middle of the city. You know? Why did they make it legal? Probably because they can tax it now, you know? Because it was working very good when it was illegal. It was working very nice. If you wanted a job, you could find a job. It wasn't hard to find a job 30 years ago. You wanted a job? Fine. You can get a job. Nowadays, try and find a job here. It's freaking unbelievable how hard it is to find a job. You're being discriminated against also. For your age or for your color. If it is white, that is. And so anyway, these girls and women that were in that room, they were putting together these cartridges. They weren't instructed properly, you know. And then you get faulty equipment. Well, what do you expect? You know, don't expect people to know how to put together cartridges if you don't tell them how to do it. So these people get mad at you for not doing a good enough job when you're not even instructed how to do something like that. So that pissed me off. Yeah. Anyway, let's continue. There's another heading in these tables that says main conflicts. The topics: stability versus development, form versus optimization, standardization versus diversity, and so on. Topic: stability versus development. Under bureaucracy, stability and other forms of high predictability leading. This defines the organization. Predictable. That's what they want from you also, to be very predictable. And most people are predictable. Why are most people predictable? Because they don't think for themselves. They've been taught what to think. And so you become very predictable. It's like a computer program. You can write a program and you can 100% perfectly predict what's going to come out of it. If it doesn't come out like you expected it to, you made a flaw in the programming. Alright? So predictability under bureaucracy. Non-bureaucratic, stability versus development. The workers in the organization are constantly developing their skills in order to improve all aspects of the societal role of organization. Brackets open, quality and efficiency. Yeah. Form versus optimization. In bureaucracy, obsessed with form and formalisms. centralized optimization of standard responsibilities. Non-bureaucratic, actively eliciting creative and decentralized optimization of organizational goals. Disregard of form when counterproductive. Right? So it seems to me that a country which has production would function much better when it's non-bureaucratic, you see. Standardization versus diversity. Under bureaucracy, obsession with standardization and curtailing diversity at the cost of quality if quality entails diversity. Under non-bureaucratic, concerned with the overall optimization of all work processes in context, of which both standardization and increasing diversity are options. Right? Error versus learning. Under bureaucracy, hey there, ho-ho, K, something ho-ho, ka-hey. Good morning. Error versus learning. Under bureaucracy, obsessed with preventing errors and mistakes. The organization redefines itself to produce what it can, not what it should. Not what it should. Right? The organization redefines itself to produce what it can, not what it should. That's quote unquote apparently also known as race to the bottom. Non-bureaucratic, error versus learning. Error and correction after error, part of continual creative optimization of work processes. Short versus long-term, bureaucratic. Exclusively short-term oriented, no care for understanding of mid or long-term goals. Yeah. If you were a boss of some company, you don't want to be short-term oriented only. That's ridiculous. You want your company to thrive 10, 20, 30 years from now. Non-bureaucratic, short-term versus long-term. Optimization on all time scales and all dimensions of success. Next heading is structural properties. Role of hierarchy. How do you spell that in English? Hierarchy? That's how you pronounce that, right? Hierarchy. Hierarchy formalized and inflexible, based on assumed competence of superiors. Yeah. So-called superiors. The one that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago probably doesn't even know how to put a cartridge together himself, you know? Non-bureaucratic, hierarchy, task dependent, and therefore flexible and competence based. Alright, next is perception of authorities. Under bureaucracy, authorities never fundamentally questioned. Yeah. Under non-bureaucratic, incompetent authorities not accepted, but coached or dismissed. Yeah. How do you get to be authority in the first place, right? They're just put there. You know, not based on what they've accomplished in the past, no, based on family inheritance or friends here and there, you know. They might have had a higher education than the one that is actually doing the work, but he has no idea what the person doing the work is doing, nor does he have any understanding of it. So the one that's doing the work should be the authority, not the other way around. Locus of control is the next topic. Under bureaucracy, formation of stable authoritarian cliques who take control over the institutional change processes to prevent further complexity. Under non-bureaucratic, locus of control, loosely and varyingly linked libertarians at control positions. Yeah. Next is measures of success. Performance measures redefined to what is delivered. That's bureaucratic. Non-bureaucratic, performance measure based on what should be delivered. Alright. Next is accountability. Hey Iota, welcome to the chat room. By the way, if you're hearing this live or non-live, you can go to ucy.tv, mouse over shows, click on any of the radios, shows, events that are out there, and you end up in the chat room. Where were we? Accountability. Under bureaucratic, suppression of all forms of accountability at a higher level and prevention of errors and retribution in case of error at the lower levels. That's bureaucratic. Non-bureaucratic, accountability, part of a normal institutional learning and competence building. Next heading is emotions. Topics like overall role, emotion of workers, emotion of co-workers. Overall role, bureaucratic, rationality and objectivity leading. Emotions treated as irrelevant source of variation, to be suppressed. Alright, if you do that in your company, you're certain to going to have errors. You know, you're dealing with people, not with robots. Non-bureaucratic, central role of positive emotions, compassion, enthusiasm, interest, as key motivators. Pervasive negative emotions, indicative of organizational failure. Yeah. Emotion of workers. So next topic. Heading. Bureaucracy. Motivating emotion negative. Activities guided by the fear of losing control. Non-democratic. Motivating emotion positive. Activates aimed at realized shared benefits. Emotion of co-workers. Bureaucratic. Utter disregard of the feelings and emotional well-being of co-workers. Right? Non-bureaucratic. Strong focus on the creation of optimal working conditions in which co-workers feel optimally motivated to give their best. Yeah. Okay, so the next table is called red flags. So we'll see what that has to say. Topic is vision. The absence of a shared living vision about the organization's goals in a larger social context. That would be bureaucratic, right? Leaders is the topic. Leaders insensitive to reasoned arguments by competent individuals at any position in the organization. Yeah, what kind of example did I give to you just 20 minutes ago or so, right? Leaders only sensitive to arguments related to goal achievement or procedure. Realizable goals are preferred over desirable goals. Leaders preferring obedience over autonomy and who curtail work floor autonomy. Alright. Next is competence. Neglect of work floor competences. Demotivating of highly autonomous, competent and committed co-workers. Gradual deterioration of quality of the working environment. The most competent and committed co-workers leaving. Yeah. The last one under competences. Standardization at the cost of curtailing of essential useful diversity. So, last one of this table, apparently, is uniformization. Uniform, it's one form, right? Like a military uniform, one form. I was playing with another word that sounds a bit like this. The word is information. If you think about it like that, it could be just understood data, right? But information, you can also hear that as planes flying, information, going all in the same direction. And that's what it's leading to at the moment in the societies we live in. The information given to us is leading us all in the same direction, you see? Anyway, this is a uniformization, strong focus on formalities while neglecting or indefinitely postponing content. Another one is compartmentalization of information and plans. And then the last one is mediocrity. Okay, so that was the table, apparently. Goes a little bit on. It says, bureaucracy, rules and procedures. That's 1. 2, specialization and division of labor. 3, hierarchy and authority. 4, technically qualified personnel. 5, separate position and incumbent. 6, written communications and records. Now, legitimate based of authority. What is that? Why does it say based? Why not base? Rational legal, it says under 1. Bureaucracy is based and rational legal is bureaucracy is based on rational legal authority. 2, traditional. 3, charismatic. Okay, I'm not sure exactly what this point is here. Let's continue. They're getting into some definitions here. The New Oxford Dictionary defines bureaucrat as an official in government department, in particular one perceived as being concerned with procedural correctness at the expense of people's needs. Let's put this word in the dictionary and see what we get, right? Copy that. Paste that in the dictionary. Let's see if we can find old dictionary I don't know if that's even possible. Because some of these old dictionaries are much better than the new ones. Let's see if this works. Now you get the description of what old is. Blah blah. No, this doesn't work. Maybe I should look it up in my own dictionary. Let's see. I know this is not supposed to be done doing live radio, you know, but let's see what we can find here, right? Because this is an old dictionary. Blah blah. Let's see. C B blah. Where are we? RSTU BR BU bureaucracy. Let's see. Burgemeester, that's a mayor. And let's see. Burger, that's you. That's a Dutch word burger. It means, well, maybe it means civilian. Anyway, yeah, I think it means civilian. But the word probably comes from borg, or burgt. And a burgt is, in the old days, like, when they still used to build walls around cities, that is called a burgt. And so the people in the city were called burger. You see? Bureau, I'm looking for bureau, burgraad. Let's see, where are we? Bursaal. Bureau water, it's not even in here, that's odd. It's not in here, how, what do you know? Maybe it's under, you know, I'm looking at bureau with an O, but maybe it's under bureau with E-A-U. So I'd have to go back, because that's the old way of spelling it, right? Yes, here it is, bureaucrat. Bureaucrat. It says, eigenmachtig en kleingeestig ambtenaar. Yeah. That would be translated into Dutch, that would be self-empowered and small-minded person working for the government. You see? So bureaucracy would be rulership by those people. Small-minded and self-enforced. You see? Okay, that's it for that, unfortunately. Not much else said. Yeah, but that's great, right? That it says small-minded in the old dictionaries. Alright, oopala, let's get this back on the road, shall we? Burg, yeah, something like that, Mike. It's like this, burgt. And that's from walling, you know? Putting a wall around a city, and then you make it a burgt. And the people in the city were called burger. You probably know the word burger, but that's from McDonald's, right? That's not what's meant. You know, it was to safeguard the city against invasion, basically. Slosh. Yeah, Dan B. Cooper, he mentioned something else also there. Slosh, which that word ties to sloot. I'll type that into Dutch, into the chat also. And sloot means a waterway. And so what they also did is, yeah, that's also true, Joe Friday and Dan B. I'll get into that. What they also did was put a waterway around a castle. Alright? So, the word slosh, which ties to the Dutch word sloot, becomes a castle. In Dutch, kasteel. Alright? So, yeah, anyway, these words. Blah, blah. Yeah. So, picking this up from the PDF. Kasteel, yeah. Kastloot? No, it doesn't make any sense, right? Kasteel, I don't know, guys. Where, etymologically this word kasteel, is coming from. What is it in German again? Schloss? Ah! Now I know. That's, a slot. Not sloot, but slot. And slot means closed. See, the castle is closed. There's a wall around it and water around it, so you can't, invade it, you see? That's the etymological tie between schloss and castle. It's closed, from the Dutch word slot. Alright? A lock. That's what it means. Slot means lock. So the castle is locked from the outside, you see? Alright. Bureaucracy. The New Oxford Dictionary defines bureaucrat as an official in government department. And I'm putting in there from the Dutch one, small-minded. In particular, one perceived as being concerned with procedural correctness at the expense of people's needs. Yeah. Now, got a little bit of trouble with the last part here. That people's needs stuff. You know. Nowadays, if you ask what people need, it's an iPhone or something like that, right? Iota says, styrofoam container containing a burger from White Castle or a burger. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Iota. Yeah, but people's needs, right? Those needs, that should be wants, more or less. Because, you know, you've been told what to want. Alright? Our needs are set in nature. We need water, for instance. Otherwise, we're gonna die, you see? So, anyway. The New Oxford Dictionary goes on. It defines bureaucracy as a system of government in which most of the important decisions are made by officials rather than by elected representatives. Yeah. A state or organization governed or managed according to such a system. The officials in such a system considered as a group or hierarchy. Excessively complicated administrative procedure, seen as characteristics of such a system. The dictionary definitions already point out some key features. Bureaucracies are concerned with procedural correctness and of excessively complex procedures, at the expense of addressing people's needs. They take over decisions from the places where they should be taken, and it is a group or hierarchical phenomena. Alright. Of course, not all administrative structures are bureaucratic, and not all bureaucracies are in administration. And most ways in which people, and even bureaucrats, interact are not at all bureaucratic. In fact, in situations without leaders, such as with friendship, even bureaucrats are not bureaucratic. It therefore makes sense to expect a particular kind of leadership as culprit. So the question is, what makes some group of cooperating people bureaucratic? Or put differently, what type of cognitive phenomena explain this particular pattern of behavior? Yeah. A suitable starting point is the strong and disturbing tendency of bureaucrats to take over authority from the places where it should reside. Yeah, guys, and this is just my vision on it, right? It says here, so the question is, what makes some group of cooperating people bureaucratic? Or put differently, what type of cognitive phenomena explains this particular pattern of behavior? This has to do with culture creation, guys. It has nothing to do with people, how they normally function. Alright? How they would normally function if we were not socially indoctrinated and engineered. You see? This person that wrote this is probably not awake himself. I'm just assuming this, I might be wrong, but he would not ask these kind of questions if he were awake. He would know that this system that we live under has not come about by accident, but is planned in that way. You see? So if you know that it is planned in this way, you would not ask these kind of questions. You would know where the answers are already. Alright? So, continuing here. A suitable starting point is the strong and disturbing tendency of bureaucracies to take over authority from the places where it should reside. Alright? I already read that. Authority. The capacity to control environments. The New Oxford Dictionary defines authority as the power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. A person or organization having power or control in a particular, typically political or administrative, sphere. The power to influence others, especially because of one's commanding manner or one's recognized knowledge about something. Yeah. It will be clear that a bureaucracy touches on many of these points. One way to understand the concept and role of authority is from creation myths. Interesting. Really? Especially in Western creation myths. He's probably talking about Greeks here and stuff like that. The pre-creation state was either chaos or something unspecified, void or nothingness. That is true. From this, an omnipotent being created the order in which lesser beings, such as humans, function. Alright. This creator is the ultimate authority who not only created the living world, but who is also responsible to sustain and control the conditions in which humans flourish or or wither. Well, that's not true, as far as I know. As far as as I understand and read these mythologies, they're naming it here this creator with a capital C, so I'll use that term. So this creator created this world, right? Supposedly. I'm not even sure that is correct, but let's say that's an assumption. And then is supposed to sustain and control the conditions. Well, that's not happening, is it? I mean, who has last seen God walking on the earth, sustaining and controlling conditions in which humans flourish or wither? You know, that doesn't happen. Nature takes care of that. Nature makes the plants grow and give us food. Nature makes it rain and give us water to drink, you see? Continuing, no wonder kings and emperors claim to derive their power directly from a deity. And no wonder that those who have no idea how to self-maintain the conditions in which they function, well, believe it. Alright? He's missing out on a very important point here also. Kings and emperors are second place, guys. You know, they claim to derive their powers directly from a deity. Who did they get told this by to do that? Right? Those are the priests, people. They are first class. They are on top, not the kings. The priest would get rid of a king if they felt like it. You know? Remember, I don't remember exactly because I'm so bad with names, but I think it was Napoleon. If I'm right, if I remember correct. I could be wrong about that. But remember that, if you've had that in history class, that he was the first one who dared to crown himself? That is done by priests, people. They decide who's in power. What's that, Akbar? You think I'm funny and I don't know it? Really? Yeah. Okay, let's see. Where were we? This defines a number of key properties of authority. Authority masters both order and disorder better than the subordinates. The authority controls and sustains the environments in which subordinates exist. Yeah, that's odd. They don't, as far as I can see. You know, nature does that. Subordinates go to authorities for guidance and to solve problems they cannot solve themselves. Yeah, because they've not been taught how to think. They've only been taught what to think. Whenever a subordinate learns to take control over more and more of its environment, its dependence on authority decreases and it claims more and more authority over its own situation. Yeah? Hey Zori, how you doing? Where you been? We missed ya. These properties are keys to the concepts of authority and bureaucracy. It entails that whenever individuals do not know how to self-maintain proper living conditions, they rely on authority to keep living conditions within manageable bounds. This need for authority scales inversely with the scope of inadequacy. The more pervasive the inadequate, the greater the need for authority. Yeah. I'm not sure, of course, but again, it sounds like he's not awake. You know, this should read like, the more inadequate the people have been made, the more they will ask for authority. That's what it should say. Right? Conversely, the better individuals cope with and maintain their own living environment, the less they need authorities. That is correct. Within the domain of political psychology, the first group is known as authoritarians, and the second as libertarians. Alright? So don't confuse yourself with a politically tainted word like libertarian. Liber comes from Greek or Latin, I'm not sure. I think Latin. And it means to free, to set free. Right? It also means book, where you get the word library from. Authoritarians prefer centralized group authority and uniformity. Right? While libertarians prefer decentralized individual authority and diversity. The predictability of authoritarian behavior has been studied in detail. It's by a book, probably, from Stanner in 2005, The Authoritarian Dynamic. Authoritarianism is characterized by a strong tendency of authoritarians to maximize oneness via central control and sameness via common standards. Yeah, reminds me of the UN. You know, that's a French word which means one, and they all come up with these standards. Countries are supposed to rule by, like Agenda 21. Especially in conditions where the things that make us one and the same, common authority and shared values, appear to be under threat. What follows is based on the scientific basis that culminated in Stanner's work on political psychology, but here interpreted initially more generally as coping with the living environment, and later interpreted more narrowly as coping with the work environment. For authoritarians, the need for authority is not an option. It is an existential need. Right? That's also a reason why they need us, and we don't need them. You see? Did you get that? For authoritarians, the need for authority is not an option. It is an existential need. Yeah. They need us. We don't need them. Right? Whether they hate or love their authorities is irrelevant. Yeah. And believe me, they hate you. They depend essentially on authorities and obey their commands because the alternative, no one to maintain living conditions, is too horrible to contemplate. This entails also that authoritarians hate the idea that their authorities are untrustworthy or incompetent, which Stanner refers to as threats to the normative order, because this is experienced as an existential threat. Being structurally dependent on others is already suboptimal, and being dependent on authorities that are incompetent, don't care about their well-being, or even abuse this dependence is highly unsettling. In fact, thoughts in this direction are avoided because it makes authoritarians feel even more inadequate than normal. Yeah. You know, there would be nowhere without us, you see. This makes authoritarians about the worst possible judges of the authorities they depend on and align with, and it stabilizes bureaucratic organizations. While authoritarians feel a pervasive and generally subconscious inadequacy to self-maintain proper living conditions, libertarians are blissfully aware of any problem. No. Really? Oh, unaware. Okay. I'm thinking like, huh? Libertarians are blissfully unaware of any problems. I read that wrong. They feel, justified or not, in control of their environment. This also entails that when the situation deteriorates, libertarians find it normal to retake or take matters in their own hands. Authoritarians in the same situation will turn to their authorities for solutions, which is less likely to yield results. Libertarians might also be taxed beyond their coping capacity, and from that moment they are more likely to adopt or accept authoritarian strategies. The reverse holds for authoritarians. When they experience a prolonged sense of control over their own situation, they behave more libertarian. Really? Crisis and times or prosperity differ, therefore, in the prevalence of authoritarians and libertarian personalities. What? What is he talking about here? Crisis and times or prosperity differ, therefore, in the prevalence of authoritarians and libertarian personalities. I have no clue what he's talking about there. In what follows, bureaucracy is the authoritarian way to organize a professional environment. Organizations that are controlled by people in a libertarian mode, who by definition are able to self-maintain proper or even nearly optimal working conditions, will not be bureaucratic because they will keep the whole organization focused on its societal goals. However, organizations controlled by authoritarians will gradually ignore the stated goals and replace them with more and more activities that serve another goal, namely minimizing of feelings of existential inadequacy at every level of the organization. Morning, Hecti, how you doing, buddy? To understand the dynamic of bureaucracy, one needs to understand the roots of concepts authoritarian and libertarian. Authoritarians versus libertarians. Princeton researcher Karen Stenner, oh, she's from Princeton, I see. Princeton researcher Karen Stenner, 2005, used the following 5 two-option questions about child-rearing values to determine the degree of authoritarianism. Yeah. Table, again, a table. This table is in 2 parts. There's authoritarians and libertarians. And under authoritarians it says children should, and under libertarians it said children should. Okay? Authoritarian, children should obey their parents, have good manners, be neat and clean, have respect for elders, follow the rules. Under libertarian, children should be responsible for their own actions, have good sense and sound judgment, be interested in how and why things happen, think for themselves, follow their own conscience. Alright? So, I don't know what's going on here, guys, but how do you expect a child to have good sense and sound judgment? Does it make any sense to you? How can you expect a child to be responsible for their actions? Usually they don't know what they're doing. You know? Be interested in how and why things happen. Yeah, that's acceptable. You know, most children are curious. Then think for themselves. Excuse me? You expect children to think for themselves when even adults don't do so? You know? And then another one, follow their own conscience. That ties to like moral values and such, right? So how do you expect children to have moral values if your parents don't teach them? And in a sense, it comes from your heart, okay? So that part is true. But moral values in one culture can be very different from moral values in another country. You know? So, and another thing is that a child's consciousness needs to develop also. So, I don't know what these libertarian views really are, and if they really are libertarian, it doesn't really make sense to me. And I don't think children should be used as an example here. Because under authoritarians it says children should obey parents. Okay, so that depends, in my opinion. If your parent tells you to jump off a bridge, would you do it? You know? So that's not making sense. And then have good manners. Well, that depends on what kind of mirror they had while growing up. If your parent is an asshole, then the child is most likely going to be too, because children mimic. You know, how can you expect children to have good manners if the parents are effed up? You know? Then be neat and clean. Excuse me, for children? They're supposed to rubble in the dirt and get themselves dirty. Have dirty fingernails. And so on and so on. That's what you're a child for. So I don't think this is very good of him to use children as an example here. Next one is have respect for elders. Really? That depends. If the elder is an authoritarian prick, you don't get any respect at all. You know? Continuing. The difference between the answers that authoritarians and libertarians choose is qualitative. Authoritarians teach children to behave in certain prescribed, it says proscribed, I think it should be prescribed, ways and to obey authorities. Libertarians teach children how to understand the world and how to act responsibly. Really? They do? I mean, as far as I know, these libertarians teach the children what they were taught by their parents. This is culture creation, guys. If they would really teach the children how to understand the world, we would have more people on earth that actually have a sense of what reality is. We don't. Most people live in a dream. Right? So how can you say that their children are taught how to understand the world? Right? Or how to act responsibly. How can you act responsibly if you're living in a dream? How can you act at all if you're living in a dream? All you're doing is messing about in ignorance. The difference between authoritarians and libertarians is therefore neither ideological nor political. It depends exclusively on the depth and pervasiveness of understanding of the living environment. Yeah. Not of the living environment. It should say pervasiveness of understanding of the system that we live under. Not of conveniently isolated parts, but of the whole environment in all of its diverse complexity. Yeah. Authoritarians and libertarians may experience and interpret a shared world quite differently. If authoritarians experience the world as too complex, the highest priority is to eliminate all sources of diversity to bring complexity down to manageable levels. And this, and only this, is the reason why bureaucrats take control over decision processes. It is not because they think they can do it better, but because of a strong unconscious urge to establish a measure of control over their world. It is not because they think they can do it better. I think they do actually think that they can do it better than the one that is actually doing the job. And because they do not know how to do that independently, they run to their authorities for ideologies, interpretations, and marching orders. Yeah, like the Council on Foreign Relations, for instance. A problem here is that their limited understanding, remember that? You know, who was it again that said, oh, it's so nice that we have the Council on Foreign Relations just across the street so I can get my marching orders from there. Mrs. Clinton. A problem here is that their limited understanding in combination with the deeply unconscious nature of the root problem precludes a proper assessment of the true sources of diversity and complexity that boggles their minds. They need their authorities to tell them why they feel inadequate, what the sources of their problems are, and how to cope with these. Which of course provides authorities ample room for manipulation. This is another example of the fact that authoritarians are the worst possible judges of their leaders. It is also a reason why so many revolutions realize the opposite of what they claim to realize. No. That's rubbish. Right? He tries to put me on a red herring here also. It says here, it is also the reason why so many revolutions realize the opposite of what they, and then brackets open, CL, brackets close, aim to realize, right? So you're supposed to focus on that, claim, aim, duh. But no. Revolutions are part of culture creation, guys. They know exactly what they're doing. They know when to fester a revolution and when not to. It has to do with control, not of the people, but the control of the great plan. It is to make a one world government. That's what these revolutions are for, especially the latest ones. They're breaking down all kinds of smaller units, right? Like Russia, so that later on they can be unified in the United Nations, you see? They had to break it down first. Yeah? You have to break down things first before you can rebuild it, right? The European Union is one example of that. You have to break down the countries themselves by removing the borders, by removing the currency, by removing political power, right? Because now all political decisions have to comply by what the European Union says, not what the country itself wants. Well, country doesn't want, but what the country's elected officials supposedly want, because also at that level it's a puppet show. Right? So you have to break down things first before you can put up the new stones, so to speak. So revolutions, they don't come from us, most of them, the vast majority of them. They give us a role, but it's a predictable role. You know, they know how we are going to react to certain environmental changes. And so if they want a revolution somewhere, they just change the environment of the people there and they wait for the revolution to happen. And they probably already have teams and groups set up to lead this so-called revolution. Means to revolve, right? Or evolve, you see? For libertarians, the complexity of the world is well below daily coping capacity, and where authoritarians see problems, they see opportunities. That's a funny one too, right? Problems are opportunities to those in power. It's a Hegelian dialectic. This is actually problematic, continuing here, this is actually problematic because realizing these opportunities is bound to lead to a further social complexification that might aggravate authoritarians even further. Libertarians are therefore, quite unwittingly, major sources of feelings of inadequacy in authoritarians. Yeah. It's a Hegelian dialectic, guys. Libertarians, authoritarians. All this leads to a one-sided resentment towards anything beyond coping capacity that authoritarians share with other authoritarians, and of which libertarians are typically completely unaware. He must think that libertarians are pretty stupid, doesn't he? Have you seen him say that they are unaware many times now? Unaware, unawake, sleeping. Those terms they link, and they link to consciousness, awareness. If your consciousness is small, you're asleep. Continuing, in fact, encroaching bureaucracies can be interpreted as a low intensity war between two ways of facing reality. While libertarians, here it goes again, while libertarians are unaware of any war being fought, oh, really, especially because they do not understand the need for it, oh, that's interesting, right? They can be blamed for co-creating a complex world surpassing authoritarian coping capabilities. Yeah. There is a need for war, not talking from our standpoint, of course. But again, this has to do with culture creation. If you make war, the countries change. That's what it's for, mostly. The fact that some industries are making money on it is a side issue. It's about the change of society that is aimed at. Authoritarians, with their limited understanding, this guy is really interesting, right? He says that libertarians are unaware and authoritarians have limited understanding. That's a nice bunch of nutcases that we are ruled by, right? Share a deep anxiety and are highly motivated to do something about it. This subconscious attitude towards the world makes them highly motivated to oppose all sources of complexity, unpredictability, novelty and growth that complexify, confuse and destabilize any ordered state of affairs. Authoritarians do have an alternative strategy to deal with complexity. They can be educated their way out of dependence. This is a perfectly feasible strategy, but it is not a strategy that they will come up with among themselves. Libertarians choose this strategy naturally. In practice, it works only when their superiors and colleagues double as mentors who help to deepen and especially broaden their understanding of the world, allow them to experiment and make mistakes to learn from, coach them to see opportunities where they originally saw problems, and allow them more and more control over their living and working environment. This is a simple solution to prevent and counteract bureaucracy. So, it says here, in practice, it works only when their superiors and colleagues double as mentors who help to deepen and especially broaden their understanding of the world. Alright? Now, I'm reading the world here as existence, reality, that which is, truth. Alright? So, but they're not being helped here to deepen their understanding of any existence, reality, or truth, or world. They are being taught how the system works. That's what it is. Nothing else. On the other hand, authoritarian superiors who feel threatened by subordinate independence will curtail any subordinate creativity and budding understanding. Alright? That's correct. Selecting this kind of leaders in an organization is a sure and time-honored strategy to foster bureaucracy. Yeah, that's correct. Most research on authoritarianism has been aimed at the more extreme authoritarian and libertarian personalities. However, it makes sense? Doesn't that supposed to say it makes sense? Maybe my English is wrong, because it's not my native language, but it says here, however, it makes sense that most people shift in and out of authoritarian and libertarian modes of being as function of whether the demands and the environmental complexity and diversity exceed scoping capacity and real-time understanding. Yeah. And again, it's real-time understanding of how the system works, not what reality is. Yeah. Not that this system is not part of reality, but it's a fake one, you see. This leads to motivational differences. Authoritarians, especially the ones with the shallowest understanding, are highly motivated to change the situation into one that is sufficiently purged or perceived sources of complexity. Yeah. Well, they're gonna get a hard time, people. Talking in the long term now. This whole authoritarian system is not gonna work. They will crumble in their own ideas. Because the world or reality is getting more complex and complex day by day by day. So, try and cope with that. In society, typically, people who look different or adhere to different norms, I read that wrong, tone-wise, so let's try this again. This leads to motivational differences. Authoritarians, especially the ones with the shallowest understanding, are highly motivated to change the situation into one that is sufficiently purged of perceived sources of complexity. In society, typically people who look different or adhere to different norms. Alright? Initially, libertarians fail to see a complexity-induced need for change and often allow authoritarian tendencies a free rein because they can deal with some additional curtailment or additional complexity for that matter. While authoritarians are motivated and unified in their yearning for a less complex world, the libertarians enjoy their freedoms and add further complexity and diversity in the system in their efforts to realize their individual potential and enjoy their freedoms. Yeah, how can you do that, right? How can you enjoy your freedom in the system? Does that make any sense to you? It tells you what kind of mind state these people have, right? They think they are free. Which of course bolsters the authoritarian determinism to oppose this progressing moral decline. Yeah, the quote-unquote moral decline. That's how they see freedom, right? Libertarian only starts to become upset when authoritarians' curtailment of complexity effectively constrains their freedom. Yeah, it's not a freedom. It's like language. It's the prison within which you can express yourself. So their freedom is how far the system allows them to act. You see. Initially, they use their more pervasive understanding to reach goals in spite of an increasing self-serving environment. This, of course, increases complexity and diversity, with the stereotypical authoritarian response to further increase curtailment and uniformity. Typically, only at a late stage they confront the red tape, incompetency, and self-serving character of the organization they have allowed or even helped to develop. This window of opportunity is an important reason why unnecessary bureaucracy can develop and become institutionalized. Next is a heading again. The heading is Intelligence versus Understanding. Yeah. Yeah, you should have given a definition of intelligence first here. Intelligence is unrelated to the difference between authoritarians and libertarians. In Stenner's words, authoritarians are not endeavoring to avoid complex thinking so much as a complex world. Authoritarians are just as intelligent as libertarians. And might value intelligence even higher than libertarians do. Yeah? This is not because libertarians value intelligence and rationality less, but because they value understanding and creativity even more. So, this really lacks a definition of those two terms, understanding and intelligence. Alright? The authoritarian prefers for intelligence, the authoritarian preference for intelligence is unsurprising because intelligence as measured by an IQ test reflects one's ability to produce expected and desired answers in response to problems formulated by others. Yeah? You should have added logic in here. IQ measures, therefore, intellectual compliance and conformity, which are typical authoritarian values. So it has to be expected that authoritarians judge a high IQ as intelligence, as intellectual compliance, as highly desirable. However, in complex times of change and uncertainty, authoritarians judge behavioral compliance, obedience, even if it defies logic, as even more desirable. Where intelligence leads to particular context-deprived standard solutions, understanding leads to situationally adapted, context-aware, unique solutions that are always in flux because they are in continual pursuit of optimality. With mere intelligence, one can improve a bad situation to a standard situation, which may or may not be optimal. But mere intelligence is equally able to reduce excellence to the same standard situation. With understanding and situational optimization, it is possible to track optimally because it allows for a continual, broadly shared, autonomous optimization process. Without understanding, one cannot see nor evaluate nor appreciate the opportunities for long-term optimization, which entails that the creative diversity necessary to remain excellent is interpreted as unnecessary and unwanted complexity. Yeah, I think this whole paragraph is quite vague, to be honest with you. Next is intelligence without understanding. Again, missing definitions here. Authoritarians live, conform table 1, in a world of which they understand many aspects only shallowly. They know the rules, protocols, and norms of normal behavior. That's strange, right? Norms and normal behavior, right? They adhere to ideologies and religions. They do. They know many examples of how to respond to particular situations and know what to say and who to obey. But they do have no pervasive understanding of why and how things happen and how the world is interconnected. In addition, they are definitely unable to think and decide for themselves, follow their own conscience, and accept the responsibility for their own actions. Authoritarians obey their authorities, and these are therefore responsible for their actions. This also entails that authoritarians cannot oversee the long or even mid-term consequences of their own and others' behavior, and they offload the responsibility for that to their authorities. And if these have no idea about the long-term consequences, or even if they have opposing goals than their stated goals, the authoritarian neither cares nor understands. It's another vague paragraph, more or less. It's talking about authoritarians, acting in what? What are they talking about? A job, or at home, or what, Our current educational system, which favors IQ and specialization over pervasive understanding, is conducive for the development of authoritarians. Yeah, that's correct. In fact, it seems that Einstein was referring to the authoritarian disposition when he described the goals of education. He did describe the goals of education. Well, let's see what he had to say. Albert Einstein, 1954, says, "The development of general ability for independent thinking and judgment should always be placed foremost, not the acquisition of special knowledge." Right? He didn't have an education, as his grandparents may have had. That's where you learn independent thinking. He wasn't taught to learn independently, taught to think independently. It goes on, otherwise he, which with his specialized knowledge, more closely resembled a well-trained dog than a harmoniously developed person. He's talking about himself here, right? The well-trained dog resemblance is a direct reference to intelligence as intellectual compliance. Right? So that's why I said, give some definitions first, right? So intelligence, even I lack a straight out sentence for defining it, but let's say that it's more broad than most people will think of it. You see, intelligence is not only a human thing. I would say that the whole universe is intelligence, is intelligent, right? If you look at how things develop, that's quite amazing, The DNA and stuff, that is quite intelligent, so to speak. Now, it's not only a human thing. Birds can also be very intelligent. They only have a very small brain. So you see, it doesn't have anything to do with how big your brain is also. Or a spider, for instance. How he draws how he makes his web. That requires intelligence. So, to me, intelligence is a natural thing that every living being has. And the whole universe as one also is filled with it. You can tell just by how our solar system works. With all the magnetic fields and stuff, protecting us from dangerous radiation. And an atmosphere that burns up little stones. big ones it can't handle. But that's why we have a giant planet outside of us that also shows that it's intelligent. You know, Jupiter, he picks up all those big rocks for us. You know, it's like a vacuum cleaner, so we don't get hit that much, you see? That shows intelligence. Alright? So let's pick this up again. The well-trained dog resemblance is a different reference to intelligence as intellectual compliance, resulting from specialist education without the benefits of the pervasive understanding that allows for independent thinking and judgment. Yeah. That would be logic, you know? The well-trained dog comparison is an effective analogy of authoritarians who exhibit desired behavior while neither understanding the larger context nor the consequences of their compliance. On top of that, it is also the ideal personality type for the organizational ideal they envision. Who does he mean they? Rationality and reality now. Rationality, the ability to think clearly, sensibly and logically, is valuable but ultimately a limited ability. Rational and logically sound thinking is only possible in a closed domain consisting of concepts that can be manipulated with logical operators. Yeah. Ratio. That's ratio. So it says here ratio, the ability to think clearly, sensibly and logically. Ratio, to think in ratios. That's something indeed probably more human-like. Although building a web as a spider does would also, you'd think he has some understanding of ratio, but to think clearly, guys, means to think without contradictions. Alright? So, rationality, the ability to think clearly, that is, to think without contradictions, sensibly and logically, is valuable but ultimately a limited ability. Rational and logically sound thinking is only possible in a closed domain consisting of concepts that can be manipulated with logical operators. Sure. The key problem with rationality is that it is perfectly possible to be rational in knowledge domain devoid of factual reality. Blah, blah, blah. Devoid of factual reality. Well, if this sentence is contradicting itself, guys. You see, because you cannot have a knowledge if something is not real. So it cannot be devoid of factual reality if you're talking about knowledge. Period. There's no other way. So this is contradicting itself. Continuing, bureaucracies have many ways to create phony realities. Yeah, here. Now he has to use kind of mind trick on you. And that's the end already, damn it. So thanks everybody. We'll see if we can pick this up next week. Take care and see you later.
How dare you? How dare you?
To create so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of